After 14 hours of debate featuring technicalities and infighting, the House scheduled to vote for 10 a.m. this morning on articles of impeachment. So how is the Senate going to handle it? Lawmakers call for reform to the FISA Court, and hashtag WallStreetPete is trending.
Joining us now to tackle all of these topics is the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack. He is here with the debrief. Always great to see you, Bob.
Good morning.
All right, so let's start with impeachment.
Yep.
Votes happening this morning by the time, in the panel, it's happening this morning. By the time this posted, will have already happened. What is the expectation around how the Senate is going to handle the trial? Do we know for sure yet?
Well, the thing to watch is any division between Mitch McConnell and the White House. Mitch McConnell, during an interview, said, I'm on the same page. I'm talking to the White House counsel. Right. Well, that's not necessary to say unless there's some differences. Remember, House Republicans in the Judiciary Committee have said Senate Republicans, the whole narrative is going to change because Senate Republicans are going to call Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and that is not necessarily the case.
Right.
So the president, I'm sure, is getting pressure from House Republicans to lean on McConnell. No, you need to call the Biden. So this is, but remember, when it goes to the Senate, I think you're going to see the exact same narrative, but flipped, where Democrats are going to say, this is a sham trial, and that kind of thing, where that's where we're seeing in the House right now.
That's so interesting about, we had a Republican member of Congress on yesterday who was exactly saying that. He said, well, they should call all these witnesses. I'm not happy about all this. And yet, why don't the Senate Republicans have the 51 votes to call all the witnesses that the White House wants to see?
Well, McConnell, I think, is going to have a firm grip on votes. And he, in so many words, has told the White House, listen, if you try to force, or if you have a senator, remember, they can't speak, but they can offer motions, offer a motion to bring Hunter Biden into the trial, McConnell's going to have the votes to vote that down. So that's something to watch. Remember, we don't have an agreement between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer here. So, in the 90s in impeachment, there was an agreement between the two leaders at the time, Daschle and Lott.
What was the agreement exactly? What do you mean by that?
Well, they had an agreement of, okay, we're going to be here for 6 days. It's going to be 6 hours a week. We have an agreement on witnesses. Now it could come down to, if they don't have an agreement, it can come down to motions of majority. Majority wins on this motion, on that motion. And some things Democrats could actually win because you could see some moderates like Susan Collins vote with the Democrats on any type of motion.
What a mess. That's why they want it to be a 2-week trial, right? They're just like, forget it. Let's just end it.
It's because it's too uncertain. You can't have a total grip on everything that's happening.
And remember, and I was looking this up, Bill Clinton did give his State of the Union while he was being impeached.
Wow.
Okay. Mitch McConnell, now that's because Republicans ran the House and Senate back. Mitch McConnell does not want to have Trump do that. And did Bill Clinton mention impeachment? No, he didn't even mention it.
That's interesting. I had not thought about that. At the same time, we had this IG report come out. Both sides spun it to their favor in the way, surprise, surprise. However, the one thing that does seem to be coming out of all of this is concern over the way that this secretive FISA Court works.
Yes.
Carter Page was at the center of this.
Yes.
I mean, basically, they really shaded the facts, hid certain exculpatory evidence in terms of getting the FISA Court to approve this warrant to surveil him. And this is an American citizen. I mean, this is something that should be deeply troubling to all Americans, regardless of your political persuasion. So do you see any future for bipartisan reform of this court?
Well, Jordan Carney wrote an article for us on thehill.com, and I was surprised at the bipartisanship on this because, as you mentioned, Carter Page, the FISA Court, the FBI didn't reveal that, oh, yes, he was actually working for the CIA, kind of left that detail out.
Right.
That's pretty egregious. So both, whether it's Dick Durbin or Mike Lee or other Republicans, Lindsey Graham says he wants to change this. Now, Ron Wyden, who has been a big proponent of FISA reform from the beginning, has said, well, wait a minute, all of a sudden now we're going to get a deal. He's skeptical. I think it depends on the detail, but the amount of, okay, let's work on this from both sides in the Senate, maybe.
That is interesting. I mean, I do think, Bob, what has happened here is that for so long, because FISA was basically being used against terrorists and unsavory characters, that they just didn't care, right? They were like, yeah, the standards are shoddy, but screw these people.
Right.
And now it's an American citizen, and involved in the Trump campaign. And whenever it switched on to that, people started caring quite a bit more. And now you see, it's a bipartisan push for FISA reform. I never thought I would.
Republicans never would have cared about this before.
Yeah, right.
They were fine with it being a rubber
stamp. Well, and the wild card here, of course, is President Trump.
Yes,
okay, because of those FISA abuses, because he's highlighted it. will he support changes to FISA? That could give it some momentum. Where other administrations, because of that reason, terrorism, they don't want terrorism on their watch, so they're like, well, let's keep it.
And
as
so
is,
in the past, he reauthorized FISA, right? I mean, this was about a year ago, and it's because the CIA came to him and said, you have to do this.
Yes.
I mean, and the FBI. It could be a similar dynamic. It's interesting.
Yes, I do think the Inspector General report is a game changer.
Right.
I mean, what they found overall, no bias. There was both sides are spinning it, but they found some major problems that the FBI director couldn't really answer, and has got to implement reforms.
Yeah, I love that Comey was out right away saying this is exculpatory for the FBI.
Sounds like I don't know what you
Slow
read,
your roll, buddy.
No.
At the same time, hashtag WallStreetPete was trending on Twitter. Refund Pete was also trending on Twitter. What is this all about?
Well, he's holding and has held some fundraisers, and it's attracted protesters. And this is good news, bad news. If you're running for president, especially on the Democratic side, you don't want Wall Street before your first name. That's not a good thing.
And it rhymes, which is really unfortunate for him.
At the same time, he's taking heat now. Why? Because he has been rising in the polls, and people weren't attacking him when he first got in the race. People didn't even know how to say his name. So this is a mixed bag, and I think that he's done an okay job of kind of, he joked about it, but they've got to watch where they're raising money, because we know that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, they're not doing this.
Well, the problem is you can't be running around saying generational change and we're going to do things differently in Washington and then be doing things the same way that the old guys were doing it.
Yes, and well, it shows you that you need money, and that's why a lot of candidates have dropped out. They didn't have the money. Kamala Harris said she didn't have the money. Well, partly is because her campaign was not run very well, and Buttigieg now is taking this heat. And listen, I think it's justified. When the liberal base, they don't like Wall Street. Chuck Schumer has taken some heat over the years for his ties to Wall Street, and he said, no, listen, he's become leader because I think he's done a good job of distancing himself from that. But Buttigieg, I think he may decide in the future not to hold these type of fundraisers.
But it's interesting though, because we'll have to check the math, but it's something like 40% only of his donations are less than $200. So we're talking about 60% of the campaign is funded by big dollar fundraisers, usually Wall Street, Silicon Valley, LA. Yeah, he's got a huge amount of billionaire donations. I don't know if he can pivot. That's just his financial lifeline.
Well, do you think it will matter with voters? Do you think?
I don't know.
I actually do, just because it goes to a core issue of this guy's not who he says he is. And since he started the race as more progressive, he used to support Bernie Sanders, he backed Medicare for All, and now he's over here doing this different thing. I think it goes to that core question of, is this guy really shooting straight with us? Is he really who he says he is?
And I would expect in the next debate, he may take some heat for this.
Yeah, because
it's
Biden,
an easy shot.
Look, Biden doing big dollar fundraisers, I know he's getting attacked, but this is who he is.
He's very authentically that. He's like, yeah, I am, and I don't care.
Right.
Yeah, he's not pretending to be something different. But when you're trying to say you're something different, and you're doing the Wall Street fundraisers, I do think that's an issue.
Right, and when Biden flipped on the super PAC supporting him, it really didn't hurt him that much. No. He just knew.
Everybody knew he was going to have to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be the big dollar candidate, which he's supposed to be, and then not have any money. So he kind of had to.
That's right, Bob.
Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next on Rising, Sunrise Movement is grading the Democratic presidential candidates and looking at how much and how the contenders talk about the Green New Deal. 2
candidates have the same rating and another lags pretty far behind. We're going to talk to the Sunrise Movement's policy and political coordinator to get into the weeds on that study. That's when Rising continues.